but we won't do that today. So welcome back to another great episode of Security Halt Podcast. As always, I'm your Lieutenant Caballero. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Sara Correll, who is the host and creator behind The Power of Our Story. And we're going to chat today about why it's important to share our story and inspire hope and resilience amongst ourselves as veterans and first responders and as human beings as a whole. So Sara, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Denny. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. How did your project begin? I know a little background for the audience out there. We've already met, we've already talked, but I want you guys to know. I want you to know all the inside details of how this project got started. So Sara, tell us, take it away.
Oh my gosh, there's so many little details. It kicked off in 2003 when I lost my dad to suicide. That was definitely the game changer for me in life. And at the time I had 3 little boys and then was going to have a 4th boy a little later on that year. It blindsided me. It was, it really changes everything when you survive a suicide with somebody that you love. And so what that did was I knew after my kids got a little older and just kind of, learning from the life experience and how to be able to do life and raise kids and have a great environment for them while you're trying to figure out what just happened. It's very surreal. So as the kids got older, I decided that I wanted to use that experience to help other people. So I went to counseling. I was in a counseling class and I happened to meet an Army veteran. We just happened to be sitting next to each other in class. And he shared a story with me. And he kind of flicked out a little bit. And I got really curious. I thought, seems like he's kind of somebody that maybe the military really invested in a lot in and, was very curious, like, why did he want to take his life 3 times? Like after he can finally retire, still in his 40s. So it's all these things as a civilian, we don't know, like why, so I had so many questions. And I just asked him, I said, would you be willing to have coffee with me? I'm actually really curious about your story. And I think even more so too, because he survived his suicide attempts. And I really wanted to understand more, like what is going through a person's head that would lose so much hope and be in such despair that, they wouldn't even tell their loved ones. And it was still so hard for me to wrap my mind around that. How could that's honestly what haunted me about my dad is what could it have been like to be filled with that much despair? So the more that I got to know this guy and his wife, I would have him come over and share his story. And I would get the people in our community, like, how can we be civilians and not be part of the cost of war? How can we have no clue? Like, I learned so much from this guy, so much about trauma, so much about what our military goes through and the families. It became something that I felt very passionate about. And little did I know, about 2 years later, our third son came home and said, I'm going to join the military and I'm going to be a ranger. And I'm like, have you not heard like everything that I've been hearing? I was, I wish I could say that I was so incredibly supportive from the very beginning, but it took me a little while. But then, my thought came is, why should it be somebody else's son? Why should somebody else's son and not mine be the one that goes out and protects our country? So, we totally supported him, before he left, and he did make it into the Ranger Regiment and doing that today. So during COVID, that's kind of when it really kind of solidified the power of our story. I So I don't know what to do in this lockdown, but why don't I just get on LinkedIn and just say, hey, are there any veterans out there that would like to have a conversation? This is the power of our story. It's about healing. 2 guys came, and then it just grew. Like they kept coming back, and then more people came, and then more groups came. And now we have first responders too. And it's been amazing.
Yeah. There's something that we as a people have lost in regards to how we carry on our oral history. It's not that we've lost a lot of rituals. We lost a lot of things. It used to be that if in Native American cultures, if the warriors went out and conducted battle and war and sieged another tribe and came back, like there was a welcoming back, an integration, a period to be able to understand what happened, to celebrate, rejoice, but also mourn the loss. We don't do that collectively. We don't. We are far removed from the man or woman that goes to the battlefield. And as a society, we tend to think that it's okay. We'll honor them with the parades, the thank a veteran, the social media posts, but that's not what's necessary. We don't need a thank you, a day of celebration, Tinker Tape parades. What we need is to be able to be folded back into our communities, be folded back into society, and be able to share our struggles. Because and the analogy that's often used is, if I share my story with you, you can take some of that weight off my shoulders. You can take some of that stress off my back and help me carry it. And that's not a burden that we shouldn't be asking. If you're willing to send service members to war for over 20 years, you should be willing to sit down and make space for them within your community to share, to be vulnerable, to be open, so that we know, because our civilian populace at large doesn't understand what it's like to be a service member. We still have people that don't understand what barracks life is. We still that don't understand what training rotations are like, that don't understand recall formations, that don't understand like the full brunt of what it means when you stand up and swear to defend and go off and fight the wars that our nation and its people vote to get involved in. And I think what you're doing is not only beautiful, but it's taking a step in the right direction to give us back a little bit more of what it means to really be human, what it means to be able to come back together and heal together as a tribe, one people, which I do not see anywhere else. And that's something we advocate on the show a lot. We try to put the human face out there, what it means to be the service member that goes back, because the end user, the people that are enjoying the liberties, enjoying the freedom, they just think it's okay to just, hey, whatever, it's a job. It's a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, Denny, I'm so with you. And I'm so sorry about that. I was absolutely disconnected until this guy shared his story. So I think that's what hurt me so much. I just thought, oh my gosh, how could we be sending these 17, 18, 19-year-old kids off and not have a reboot, not have a real reboot where, they are reintegrated back, helped in every way, a warm handoff. Of course, like I said, I've got the four boys, so I'm imagining them. So I'm and it's interesting, the example that you used about the Native Americans, when the warriors come back, that was the exact example that one of our instructors shared with us also, that I've always remembered from those classes.
Yeah.
And so, that is exactly what we hope to be, is to be that kind of, place for psychological safety, connection, vetted resources, total support, another family, consistency, healing through, storytelling it's so non-threatening.
Yeah.
It's not putting anybody on the spot. It's just, you're just listening to somebody else who's like kind of sharing your own story and then helping you have the language. And then having somebody right there say, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah. It creates a space and the the idea that it's all right to have these commonalities. A lot of times when we just live the experience in our head and keep that story locked in, we are just running it through a filter of our own judgment. We're constantly trying to quarterback ourselves. What we don't understand is when you put it out there, whether you write it and let somebody read it, or you're in a space where you feel safe and secure and you can let it out and be able to let others interpret and see and be able to tell you like, hey, you're seeing it all wrong. Remove the judgment. Be non-judgmental. Listen to our feedback. Listen to how we're hearing the story. You go from being the villain to being the hero real quick. And it's not done often enough. We are so happy and completely okay with judging ourselves as the villain, as if we did everything wrong. But then when we allow ourselves to finally like share it with other people and get their feedback, it's like, wow, okay. I spent the last few years judging myself for no reason. Like, yeah, this is crazy. And the reality is a lot of us were in our early 20s, late teens, when you were sent off to go do something that is not normal. It's not. And we expect that we should be able to rationalize it and be able to put, the filters of modern judgment and say that, yeah, it's okay. Or no, it wasn't okay. And this was wrong. And this was it was an abnormal experience, man. It's not meant. It's not something that was calculated and well thought out and measured for how you would feel in the future. And they're like, yeah, he'll be fine. They'll be fine. They should be able to be exposed to constantly exploding vehicles, seeing their best friends pass in front of them. Like all these things are not normal, yet we try to judge them and put them through this filter of normal judgment. And it's like, no, like allow yourself some grace. In your experience doing this project, what has that been like, being able to see individuals sort of go from judging themselves so harshly to finally being able to say like, wow, okay, like until I said it out loud, like I wasn't free. I was still being held hostage by my own memory.
Yeah, I see that all the time. And I think that's what kills me. Like, how can we not have a place to get these narratives changed into what is human, what is normal before the separation, before people lose their tribe and they're trying to figure out all this stuff. And all this stuff bubbles up when they have a little more time and they're not connecting with people. It's the perfect storm. It's the perfect, terrible storm. Like, it's like we're setting people up for like, I don't know, what's the word, to not be successful. I mean, it's terrible. It's really terrible. It's amazing though, when you when you can have these conversations and get the right narratives in there, like, right. Vulnerability, right. They feel, okay, oh, I feel weak sharing this. Yeah. Like, no, that is what's strong. That's what's healing. And that's where other people can say, oh my gosh, yeah, I struggle with that too. And how healing that is. That has to be the next mission. That has to be in the arena when you get out. What is human, what is normal is the strength of vulnerability. Like when you get it out there, that's when you can really see what's going on. That's when you can heal. And that's where the courage is. It's really just changing those narratives. Like, you need to suffer in silence. Well, I can see that maybe in combat, maybe during your mission, but not being human, not life. Gosh, so many things. It's just, I have seen people come on our groups, the light is out. They're kind of sitting on the corner of the couch, not saying anything. Yeah. And then we'll have one storyteller. You never know whose story it's going to be, where it just absolutely changes their perspective. And so I have seen people just come alive. Thrive. I mean, from, a dispatcher we have on our group, law enforcement, people, veterans, It's a little different. It's interesting on our group. It seems like the law enforcement are a little more consistent on our groups. I think veterans are still trying to find their community and their way. But it has been great to have them come on and share their stories too, and then others to be able to connect to it, whether they stay with us or not. They're always part of our tribe. That's how we say it. Then there's constant connecting happening. People have started businesses together. They've been on documentaries with Michael Geyer. Simple connection and sharing and collaborating. Been incredible to see.
Because that's it. You're allowing people that have the same and like trauma, the same shared experience to come together where, we might not find each other if we're just out there drifting in everyday life. There's a big aversion to utilizing Zoom, utilizing the internet, because yes, human interaction face to face, it's so crucial, but use the tools you have. Use the tools you have. You got to be willing to be vulnerable and try things. And I hear it so many times. We run our own peer-to-peer support group, and guys are like, man, like just this past weekend, sitting down in front of a group of friends, one of them was having a really tough time. And he's like, man, like I miss this. I miss this connection. And it's like, I understand you're thousands of miles away from me, but I will be there with you every friggin' evening if we have to. Just dial in to call me. Get on FaceTime. You're not alone. But it's, we are, and I was there. I know it sounds so crazy, but I was there too. I didn't want to reach out for help. I didn't want to have connection. And all it takes is just one time with the right person, the right story to pull you in and realize like the lifeline's been there all along.
Yeah.
The FaceTime, the Zoom, use the tools you have. It's not ideal. It's not the greatest, but hey, you know what? You form a plan. You make a trip. You plan out a trip to actually meet face to face. Then you can actually have that. Hey, in 4 months from now, we're going to do a boys trip. We're going to meet up. We're going to go camping, whatever it is. Because we're all bound by the restrictions of our fiscal responsibilities and money. It sucks, but save money and use Zoom while you can.
Yeah. It's, I've noticed it just across the board from the last, 3.5 years on Zoom now. And, a little over 3 years, but what has been so cool is the relationships that are built. They're real. They really are built. So we'll see, like somebody will come in town and then I'll try to get all the people in the San Diego or Southern California area together and, to meet the person that's coming down from Seattle or wherever. And it is so fun because there's a novelty, that you get to actually see the person, give them a big hug.
Yeah.
And then you just go on with the friendship that's already built. It really is a real friendship. Like I am very grateful for Zoom. I don't always feel like that at the time. You get a little tired of, being on Zoom, but you really can build genuine friendships on there.
Absolutely. And we've been doing it for decades now, with the, online video gaming. Like guys have been they've been meeting in lobbies, playing video games forever. And then they finally meet 20, 30 years down the road. And it's like, it's the same thing, guys. It's the same thing. Be open to it. How has the program grown over the years since you started it?
Oh my gosh. I think the biggest thing, so we have about 4 groups now that meet regularly. We have a storytelling group that's about to happen for the summer. I'm really excited about that. We explore, we try different things, like what is really resonating with people. So the way it's going to look this summer is we have Holly, she's a Gold Star mom, Holly Higgins, that works actually with Scott Mann for his play Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret, which is really powerful. It's really powerful. Everyone should see it, I think. But she helps with the storytelling part. So she's going to come on and help the people on our groups really share their story. So really excited about that. Then we also have roundtable discussions, because it just was beginning to be clear that like law enforcement, veterans, talking about like mental health and kind of the hardship that they've had, maybe getting appointments and what do you do? So these roundtable discussions are facilitated mostly by a couple Leos, retired Leos. And there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of discussions around what do you do with betrayal?
Yeah.
What do you do with grief? Like the things that we don't really talk about. And, it was interesting putting these talks out on YouTube, publishing it. It was incredible how many more views there were when the topic was betrayal and grief and moral injury. And so that gave us all a clue, like, okay, we got to start talking about this. And then with storytelling too, what I really like to do, I get the people who have kind of come out. They're not, as Scott Mann says, still in the whale's belly, with that, suffering, but they've come out. They've seen the power in their story and how they can actually repurpose it and help other people with their story. So I like to find those because those, it gives other people hope.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're really trying to do. Like we had some of the young service members that were at Abbey Gate, who Moral Compass actually connected me to. And it was so powerful to hear their story. And it was so powerful for us to give them feedback and just to hear how that impacted them. So that's, anyway, I digress. But
you're doing great. You steer the ship.
I'm really excited about that because I think that I just try to take the temperature of what's happening. Like, where are we going? What are people feeling? What does it seem like the need is right now? And I think having a place like what I have seen with our protectors is I feel like I am surrounded by the most amazing people. That's how I have been impacted by this. Mm-hmm. People that are, they're just the integrity and the care, like really caring, like really protective as people, as human beings. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of these talks too about what is good leadership, what is leadership that's not good. And these talks are really important because it really gives us all clarity. Like it, sometimes if we're in our own head and we're not talking about these things can get very muddled. Yeah. And then one of the big things that comes up too is shame. When we don't have clarity on our story and that shame gets in there and that big old storm happens, it's very distracting. But through storytelling and conversation and really talking about these hard topics of the situation where we have felt deeply betrayed, but we didn't have the language to really talk about it, or like what really happened there, it is so freeing to get that out with, I think, people that are wise and they're mature and the conversations are mature and they're healing and there's a ripple effect. So,
yeah, it's funny you bring up shame and betrayal because in my own experience and reaching out and finding people, I am seeing that we have two distinct new groups of individuals that are still dealing with a lot. Those that were forced out due to the COVID mandates that feel like they can't talk or seek support because even the discussion as to why they weren't willing to get the vaccine might make them someone that they should not be associated with and make them feel like they're a social pariah. And the other group are individuals who left immediately following the withdrawal from Afghanistan because of how there was how the administration handled it and the lack of accountability. In both situations, we are held to such a high level of standards. We have to accomplish the impossible oftentimes, and there's so much scrutiny. And every service member is made to uphold the standard. And if we fail to do our job, fail to do our mission, fail to do our duty and our obligation, there's no second chance a lot of times. For example, if when I was in as a warrant officer on the detachment, if I would have failed to protect my detachment members or bungled the intel picture and my negligence led to service members' deaths, I wouldn't have a job. I would not have a job. I'd lose my beret. I'd lose my tab. But then when we looked at the individuals in charge, nothing was ever done. And I know from a lot of friends that left immediately following, they're still dealing with that sense of betrayal and dealing with that feeling of shame. Knowing that service members had deep ties to Afghan counterparts, they weren't able to help.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, that still sits. And same with the COVID, feeling like, hey, you gave us this religious exemption. I went through, I did everything I needed to, but you still threw me away so fast. And those individuals are logging on for peer support, and they still have no way of making sense of how their journey was left unfinished.
Yeah. I've seen that too. I have seen both of those things that you're talking about. Again, just from all the stories that just the COVID, there is, I don't want to get too specific, of course, but
absolutely.
Conversations I've had, that was one of the most deeply rattling situations for in their service, is when they had all the stuff that they did in service, but it was going against their conscience to get this vaccine.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking, because all the camaraderie that made the team so powerfully all of a sudden ended. And so that is a real deal right there. That is a moral injury. It's the feeling of betrayal. Like, gosh, did any of this mean what I thought it meant?
Yeah.
Like, how could this happen? That is a real thing that people really, really have to talk about, because it can really mess with you if you don't get that out. I think also, like, one thing that we've really seen on our talks, and this has been really interesting to see, is when there is a traumatic event, for anybody, any human, the next step, like the way that it is handled, can actually be worse than the actual event. Yep. And that's what to me, and for so many of us, was so heartbreaking about the Abbey Gate with these young service members, to go in front of Congress and, share your testimony about what happened, and then have them come out to say that we really don't see that it was chaotic, and it was not validated.
Yeah.
And even some of these service members, I think what was so heartbreaking too, is that these guys actually started having self-doubt. And when it was incredible, I mean, Aiden Gunderson was 21 when he was on the plane going to Abbey Gate, and what he had to deal with was unbelievable. So it's just, can you just say that, it was terrible. We really, really badly messed up.
It feels so shameful, and it feels almost as if they're wanting to blame or victim blame. And it's to see our service members be so courageous, so vulnerable to go there and again, tell their stories, share their perspectives, share the truth, and then immediately have a press conference and public release that, nah, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that chaotic. We controlled everything on the ground. It's like, no,
Yeah.
we didn't. When you're not helping provide a sense of closure for the men and women that went there.
Right. That's it. It's a horrible thing to do, to not acknowledge the trauma that they themselves put these service members into.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a horrible thing to do to them. And I think that's why it was a real honor for all of us to come together to say, we want to hear you and we want to support you. And, and hopefully the ripple effect from that also will maybe empower them to keep sharing their story and empower the people in the group to keep talking about it. Just to do anything to protect our service members from taking on anything that they shouldn't own. Yeah. It's like there's Scott Duncan. He's just awesome. He's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Marines. And he got on there and just said the most powerful healing words to them. I mean, it was incredible, the validation that he gave them that they didn't get from the leadership, unfortunately, the White House. So when you hear voices like that, it was really great to see them hear that.
Yeah.
So
now, when it comes to our law enforcement officers, our first responders, there's it's undoubtedly that community is tied to ours. We're two sides of the same coin, but yet when it comes to their support and access to mental health while on the job, it's not as easily accessible. And I say that jokingly because it's still incredibly hard in the military, but it's incredibly harder for our law enforcement professionals, our first responders, because when they raise their hand and ask for assistance, ask for help, it immediately makes them into a liability for that police department. And the way we are treating our first responders right now in this country is as a hostile force. We don't see them as the people that are holding the line for us, protecting us, are there when we absolutely need them the most. And we're making them out to be the enemy, villains, vigilantes. And that has an impact on somebody that all they wanted to do was serve and protect. When our national media makes them out to be nothing but heartless criminals, even our own citizenry right now, if you stand up and try to do the right thing to stop somebody from hurting somebody, you run a real risk of being painted as a horrible human being that took actions against somebody that you didn't even have to. And we're seeing that right now. It makes a lot of people question whether they should get involved and do the right thing. And that's a horrible message to send. How are our law enforcement and first responder individuals reacting and taking to sharing their story?
Well, I think the great thing is that more and more of them are coming out. They're writing books. They're sharing their stories. They're sharing I think that the great things, the great part of them is coming out. And they're also really sharing about the hardship of some of the agencies, where maybe management is a little bit more about self-promotion, right? And not protecting their people that really need to be protected right now. They really need to be. And, it's interesting. Before I did this, I really didn't know I knew a few first responders from, kids' parents and stuff like that, but not very well. But from really growing just great trust and great friendships with quite a few law enforcement officers and, dispatchers, firefighters, they are the most amazing people to me. I mean, they are so loyal. I remember we had something happen in our family and my phone blew up. They were all checking on us. It's just that heart of
Yeah.
really caring, of running to the bullets like our veterans, they run to the problem, the issue, and protect. And that's how I see our first responders now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little more detached before, but I was always so grateful that they were there, but to really see them as human beings. And so again, I think I feel very protective of them. I feel very protective of our protectors.
Absolutely. When we in the military deploy and go off to combat, it's always under the understanding that we're coming back home. That, God willing, we do everything right and we come back home. Our law enforcement, they're stepping out into our nation, into our streets, and they're going into danger every single day. And that's not, that's not something to take lightly. They're not rotating back to, a place where they're secure. They're going into their neighborhoods, into their community, and they're doing their work. So every morning when they get up and put on the uniform and go out there into the patrol, it's with the understanding that they might not come home.
Yeah.
Like, they have to live with that idea that they're working in a constantly deployed environment. And that's something that we all need to understand and have a little more grace and understanding for what they go through.
I think so too. Yeah, it's they're seeing their friends getting ambushed. They're seeing the high suicide rate, just like the veterans.
Yep.
They are, there's a lot that needs to start changing in the agencies about how they deal with things. Like if there's a critical incident and there's, a police shooting, I think what I'd never really thought about, again, because, I was in a different kind of world. But people don't realize how traumatizing it is for them too. Yeah. It is traumatizing for them to actually get to when things escalate to that point where they actually have to shoot somebody. It is, it's traumatizing. And then there's a lot of isolation that happens after that. And there's just so much going on, and there's a lot of broad brush stroking because of like what you said. If the media couches something that was not done well, or, maybe a bad actor somewhere, which in, all careers there are. But it's definitely a broad brush stroking, it seems these days, which makes everything even harder for law enforcement, they're leaving. There's a lot of them that are leaving. And I think there's a lot that civilians, we need to really think about and really see what's happening. We have to support our law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our police officers don't make enough. They don't have the budget to do their job effectively. Shifts are getting longer. Individuals are having to man larger sectors of their city. Nobody wants to do the job, not for the amount of money, not for the disrespect. And I feel like we're going to see ourselves in a real crisis. And that's unfortunate because I don't blame them. It's same for individuals that don't want to continue serving. When it's blatantly clear and obvious that the people that create the standards and the regulations will hold your feet to the fire when you do something wrong. But we're not willing to fire and willing to hold people accountable at higher echelons when they fail to do their job, when they fail the mission. It's ridiculous. When it comes to the civilian engagement and normal everyday Americans, how is that going on in the group? How many of group members, how many people tuning in are just average day citizens?
On our group, it's all first responders and veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And actually we have social workers now. We have a couple social workers. We have some coaches, counselors. But that's the whole point. It's very important to create safety.
Yeah.
So I don't just want anybody, but if they're carrying bridge builders, like
Yeah.
clinicians who really care and who are, they are culturally competent, I guess.
It's true. It's true. You can't have just any type of clinician or provider.
I feel hopeful. Like I just, when I look on LinkedIn is my favorite social media place. I just think that some of the most awesome people. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I again am just so honored and thrilled with the people that I have become friends with and built trust with and built community with. And I just can't help but believe that this has to grow with the people that are of this caliber, who care so much, have the grit and the courage to step out and make things happen. And then how we are trying to be stronger together, and the networking is growing, the language and the clarity of what's happening through all the conversations. I can't, like everything. There's a great quote by Margaret Mead, and I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not even going to try. But it's basically saying grassroots is where things are going to make a difference.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot going on. I think people who are on the side of trying to suppress people are going to have a tough time.
Yeah.
Because they're, truth and love will win. And we have to keep believing that and keep stepping out and being thoughtful, of course, and being wise and caring in the way that we do it, as unifying as possible, in humility, in all those really great traits to keep pushing the truth forward.
Absolutely.
So I feel very hopeful. It is hard to see the things that are going on where you're just like, okay, this is beyond confusing right now. How does that make sense?
Yep.
I could say that all the time, but I do see this uptick of people being more vocal. And what I love too is, again, I feel like it's with wisdom. It's with, at least those are the people that I'm connecting with. I'm just amazed. So
I think compassion plays a huge role. It takes a lot more strength to meet aggression with compassion and hatred with compassion. It takes a lot more emotional intelligence to just be compassionate, understand, not asking somebody to just bend to your will, but rather just be understanding, just being kind, reaching for kindness rather than anything else. First and foremost, like, you're not going to solve any problem by going off the handle and being completely angry and violent. Simply choose to be compassionate in the moment. That's just the easiest thing. It's the easiest way to go about it. You're going to feel better. The people around you are going to be grateful for it. And at the end of the day, it only helps promote your message a lot more.
Yeah. It is more the solution, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, it's understandable why people can feel frustrated, why we can all feel frustrated and concerned. And, but you're right. If we want to make impact and if we want to be part of the solution, if we can do that with compassion, like you said, which is a great word, being thoughtful in how we do it and how we say things, to be unifying versus, attacking the other side, whatever the other side is. It's definitely the way to build. Yeah. So I am with you.
Where do you envision your program going? Where do you see the next, I would say, 100-meter target being? As I really feel like this could be a greater, bigger movement with nodes, mapping it out to actually have, live sessions, being able to incorporate more. And this is something that, while grassroots is important, and that's certainly what we do, I feel like we need more of this in military communities. I feel like this is perfectly suited for something that can be occurring naturally, organically on base or right off base.
Yeah, I would love to see that happen. I am definitely somebody building the plane while flying it. I just
Same here.
Yeah, well, good. We're good partners through
We're
this.
on the same plane.
Right. We'll get it figured out so it doesn't crash and it'll just keep going. But I think if I waited to just figure it out, I would never get going. And so that's why I just keep trying to put the next foot, meet the next person, see how we can collaborate. I mean, there's different ways that this could go. It could be like an AA, except for protectors and trauma. It could be, oh gosh. I'm playing with a lot of ideas. Like we have a guy that's coming on that I am so thrilled. I can hardly stand it. He's coming on next month and he's a psychiatrist from Zimbabwe.
Oh, wow.
And he made a video about 4 months ago about a friendship bench. And they could not take care of all the people that had mental health issues. There's like 8 psychiatrists, I think. And not everybody could get in. And there's a high depression rate in Zimbabwe and all these things that I didn't know. And so they said, okay, we'll get you some help. So they ended up getting these grandmas, 65 and older, these women. And I don't think he was excited at first. He was like, what? Like, how is that going to help? But they did like an evidence-based, talking therapy, trained them just, as lay people. And these grandmas, they're very reliable. Yeah. And, it worked so well that it was even better, in a bigger impact, better impact than the psychiatrist. So I keep thinking of things like that. Like, how can we support the VA?
Yeah, train the trainer, create sensors. That's something that we've already done in Master in the Military. Everybody's a sensor. Everybody is a participant in the same fight. If we can empower people, if that concept has already been proven, like you're onto something. Like that is something that you're definitely, yeah.
Thank you for validating that. Like, I mean, I've sent it to people at the VA. I'm reaching out more like, please be on this talk in July.
Absolutely.
Please be on this talk, and I'll definitely let you know too. Cause I think, I just think there's too much emphasis on having all these letters behind your name.
There is.
People, right? People there intuitively can be empathetic. And just listen and maybe get a few pointers, right? A little bit of training, but not years of, therapy, getting some kind of MSW or, MFT or something like that. There's so much we could be doing.
And I don't want to discredit anybody. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's not useful. But I will say this. I got my certification in mindfulness. But before that, I went and got my certification in motivational interviewing techniques. And before that, I sat down and studied Brene Brown. And before that, I was working with arguably one of the greatest speech doctors that I could ever been gifted to have as a guiding, helping hand and mentor to learn how to be more emotionally intelligent, to learn how to actually have a conversation, to learn how to get back what I had lost after TBI. And one of the things that you realize when you're doing the healing, when you're an active participant in your recovery, and I'm not talking about just a couple weeks of doing the right thing, but I'm talking about over the course of a few years, and you realize that now you have a tried and true method of what's keeping you healthy, keeping you on the road. Why not share that? Why not get a peer-to-peer certification from your state, which I did, which shows. And one thing I realized while I was going through that test is like, I learned everything I needed from Dr. Kristen Neff, from Brene Brown, from all these brilliant women leaders that I had no exposure to until I had a doctor that sat down with me and said, hey, you can be an agent of your own recovery. You can have some say. You can learn a lot of things on your own, and we can talk about it. And it's like having that sort of mentorship and leadership from a doctor that doesn't just say, well, you need to come to me for everything. It's like, no, at some point you have to teach a man how to fish.
Yeah, that's great.
At some point, I'm not going to have my doctor. At some point, they're going to discharge me. And if I'm lost, it's because I didn't advocate for myself. It's because I didn't share and divulge enough information. It's not their fault. Some of it's on me. If I'm having a crisis 6-7 years down the road because of something new, hey, that's understandable. But if I fail to go into that doctor's office and I fail to divulge all of my trauma, and I keep it guarded, and I'm just waiting for them to ask the magic question. No, you need to be there, be present, be vulnerable, be willing to give everything and go in depth and sit there and do the work they ask you to do, because they will ask you to do a little bit of homework, and that's okay. That's you being there, meeting that provider at the halfway point, and then going on and reading and then learning more, finding the resources that can give you more insight on, Body Keeps the Score. That's another great book that I recommend, because we don't have this. We don't have the knowledge. We chose to go off and be badasses. We chose to go off, become Green Berets, Rangers, Navy SEALs, infantry, whatever you chose to do. And that's amazing. But because we chose that, we didn't intuitively go off and go to college and learn all this other stuff. And that's okay too. But just sitting here not wanting to seek out that knowledge, we have no one else to blame. I was there. I couldn't read and I couldn't focus enough to read. And that's where mindfulness came in. It was so helpful. And it was just staring at one page and just like, focus, read. After that, dive into the text, get information, because sometimes you're going to have a crummy doctor. And it's okay to be like, well, I need to seek a second opinion. And that's where you come in, having that ability to stand up and advocate for yourself. So it is something that we all as veterans need to be willing to do, to put on that thinking cap, to put on that amateur scientist hat and say, I need to have some say in my own healing, in my own treatment. Maybe I should just sit here and just accept that I should take all these pills. Maybe there's a different way. And that's the beauty in being able to be empowered in your healing journey. And we don't do enough of that because we're waiting for somebody with a bunch of letters behind their name tell us exactly what to do. No, brothers and sisters. Yeah. You can have some say in your journey too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. I was in, I do not consider myself a clinician. I don't have those letters. I have a certification in addiction counseling. I was thinking that I would probably be a therapist. And so I went through that and I thought, I don't think I want to do that. I saw some interesting things. That was an interesting journey about the mental health arena. And what I saw is they are just people.
Yes.
They are just people. And some of them I was not very impressed by, to be honest with you. I was a little concerned that they would be with other people in their mental health. I would never, ever let I'm just being honest here. People have to know that just because you have letters behind your name does not mean it's a good fit. And absolutely, like you were saying, it would be like dating. Okay, that did not seem like a good fit. Let's try another. But I will tell you something. I have learned way more from our protectors themselves, sharing their stories, listening to podcasts. Yeah. Honestly, I was just telling my family last night. Actually, I said, there's some really good strategies. It's really good to learn the language. That's, great part about having an education in that arena. Yeah. But the learning has been with connecting with people. Absolutely. And so just like you were saying about advocating for yourself, you really trust that voice in you. Yep. Trust that, grow it, talk to people. At the Honor Foundation, I love the Honor Foundation. They help, the soft community and the enabling positions to transition. And they really talk about the importance of networking and storytelling. Yep. To really start, fine-tuning your stories, and they're helping to transition to, a career. But there's so much power, whatever you're doing, in fine-tuning your story in many stories, to be able to connect with people, and then learning from people by talking to people. And it's so much the same way in the mental health too. To flourish. It is, it's the connection and what you learn from lived experience. And it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Could not have learned that from a classroom setting.
No, I owe a lot to such great, and it's funny, the most influential and the most eye-opening doctors that I have been able to, but by the grace of God, have had in my life were the speech doctors. I don't know what it is. They are unbelievable gifts to people in the soft community with a lot of TBI. You know who you are. I'm not going to embarrass you by putting your names out there again, but it's just phenomenal that I feel like the real true defining thing is compassion and the ability to really connect with the patient as a human being. Is there's so many that just see you as a token or something to brag about. And you see that a lot with guys from the Ranger community, SEAL community, SF. When we go to a clinic or go see a specialist, they just see us as somebody that's going to be able to give them a cool coin and they can brag to their friends. And I've seen that so many times. Like, no, I am a human being. I am a human being that's coming to you with so many different needs. I am not a token. I am not something to be collected. And it's sad. But when you start seeing the peer-to-peer advocacy, when you start seeing people that are healing and on their own positive journey, and they reach out, they're reaching out to human beings, brothers, sisters. They're not exclusively looking for one demographic. And that's the beauty of it. Is you're not looking for statistics. You're just looking to save a life. Yeah.
That's so powerful. I don't know if you've run into Dr. Shauna Springer, Doc Springer.
Mm-mm.
Have you talked? Oh, she's awesome. You know what I love about her, and this is from actually other warriors who have shared about her being their doc. She was at the VA. And like right when she got out of Harvard, But what's so cool about her is that she was so humble. She wanted the veterans to teach me. What did you go through?
Yeah.
And so she developed this great rapport. And then she had such a heart to really want to really learn and understand. And so she wrote this book called Warrior. And I really loved it. I learned a lot from that book too. About so many different things that me as a civilian would not know.
I'm about to put that on my book list.
Yes, I think so highly of her. I mean, we've become friends but I've learned a lot from her. And it's not only her education, it's her humility.
Oh yeah. That's the human thing, the human connection to be able to sit down with your demographic that you want to work with, that you want to heal and say, I need to learn about you because we're so different as a community. We are so different. And this is something that I've found out is a lot of us go into a doctor's office and we don't even tell them what we're there for. Like, well, yeah, we minimize it. We constantly minimize. So like one of the things that the clinicians aren't ready to is like understand how to like peel back the layers. Cause like, okay, this patient might come in presenting X, Y, and Z, but in reality, I need to really peel back the layer because there's probably like 5 or 6 things this person isn't saying. And I've only encountered a few doctors that are willing to do that. Like, hey, wait a second. You're a former soft guy. Okay, tell me the truth. How many things are wrong with you today? And that's a reality.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because I think, because I feel like I've had to learn a lot. I've had, a SEAL and I think in particular that I spent the most time with, I feel like I learned a lot from him. He was very patient with me because there's just a lot that I didn't understand, or maybe some things I kind of took a little personally, like, well, how come you don't get back to me if I'm, emailing this? And I just found out that was kind of a thing. No news is good news.
Yeah.
Little things like that. Like little things
that is
like
so
that.
True. That is so true.
Right? And I'm like, I'm waiting. Like, Help me out here. I don't know what to think about this.
Yeah.
Are you mad?
Yeah.
Are you?
I've had to learn about email etiquette and oh my God. Yeah, that hit me right in the soul. Yeah. It's so different. We communicate so differently in the military, and we don't stop to think, unless we get help, to go back to understand like how to properly communicate, how to be actually intentionally engaged in a conversation, how to be actual, be present, actually listen and be supportive. We get in this mindset in the military. Well, if somebody's telling me the problems, I got to find the solution. It's like, no. You be an active listener. You're not trying to solve everybody's problem, because that's what we've been taught to do. It's like, okay, I'm hearing a problem, I got to solve it. And it's like, no, dude, like your wife just wants to tell you about her crummy day at work. You don't have to kill her coworker. My gosh. Sara, thank you so much for being on here today. This was amazing. I really hope I can get you back on another time. We need to open up and have more discussion, and I'm so glad you're doing that. Once again, what's your social media? What's your website? How can guys or gals get involved and be a part of this?
So if you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Sara Correll, or The Power of Our Story. You can go on our website, reach out to us there also. It's thepowerofourstory.com. Just feel free to connect with us, and we'll get you the links and get you on, and you can have your camera on or off. You can participate or not. We're for you. That's the thing. We get it. We're for you. And just, go at your own pace, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. And if you look into the episode description of this episode, you'll see a link where you can just click and go straight there. So, just do that. Save yourself the trouble of having to memorize this while you're driving down the street or, going for your coffee. Thanks again, Sara. Until next time.
I appreciate it. Take care.